The Magus isn't great as a leader. They might actually be the worst leader we can have in the Genestealer Cult roster. Now in 9th edition, the Magus was great because we had psychic powers. You could choose 2 different psychic powers and cast them in your turn, so we could have an extra attack on a unit, or they could advance and charge. The Magus was an amazing force multiplier. But now, we don't have a psychic phase because it's 10th edition, and we just have the 1 psychic power, which is very short range. Now the profile of the Magus is very generic, human-shaped person that you get across a lot of different factions. 6-inch move, toughness 3, 5+ save, 4 wounds. Yeah, it's a person. So there's nothing special there. For the weapons, we have an auto pistol. Ooh, maybe we'll fire it at some point. But no psychic attack. There is no smite. There is no cleanse, no scourge, no nothing there. And then for melee, we have 3 attacks with a stick. It's a strength 5 stick that does d3 damage, but it's still just a stick. For an average of like 1 wound, or 2 wounds if you're lucky, or facing something very weak. But then something with a very weak armor save is probably not going to have more than 1 wound anyway. So you might do 1 wound. This means that the Magus is not fulfilling any kind of combat character role. In 9th edition we had a bio dagger that did a mortal wound on a 3+, just 1 attack, but it's an extra wound. In 8th edition there was the dagger of swift sacrifice, which was a great weapon to do armor penetration and extra damage. And it was like, surprise, my Magus is actually good in combat. Bet you weren't expecting that. And in 9th edition, the Cult of the Bladed Cog could have a mechanical force field that did mortal wounds whenever someone charged you. And at the start of every combat phase, it would do more mortal wounds before any combat had taken place. Now there is no Magus combat build. At least not until we get more detachments, which is whenever the Codex comes out. And then we have to hope that there's some enhancement there that's like, oh, here's an actually good combat weapon. And even then, you'll probably want to put it on the Primus, because the Primus is our combat character and can go well with Acolyte hybrids, complements the Acolyte hybrids, gives them rerolls, and the weapons that he has fits the combat style of the Acolytes, assuming you're not just going pure demolition charges and then ignoring any weapon after that. And because we have no combat options, we also don't want to join hybrid metamorphs. The other reason we don't want to join hybrid metamorphs is because then we lose the scout ability. The Magus doesn't have scout, so putting them in a unit of metamorphs with scout, they lose scout. Because every model in the unit needs to have scout in order to scout. That, and people tend to take Acolyte hybrids over metamorphs anyway. So our options for putting them in a unit, you put the Magus in a unit of neophytes. And then the unit of neophytes will get a 5+ feel no pain, but only against psychic attacks. We're not getting a lot of bonus utility out of that here. No rerolls to hit, no fights first, which you wouldn't really want on neophytes anyway, and no lethal hits to make combat do something for them. But again, you wouldn't want that on neophytes. So the Magus is one of the few characters that goes with neophytes, but only because the other options are not great for the Magus. Not that the neophytes are getting anything particular out of it. The Magus really needed a points reduction, considering they're not doing a lot, but they didn't receive a points reduction. Maybe we should just be thankful that the Magus did not go up in points, whereas a lot of Genestealer Cult units did. So here's one of the good ways I can think of to use the Magus. That person there is Christian von Carmian. Every day he gets comments like, take off the VR headset, go outside, touch grass. But aside from the dangers of the sun, outside also has a lot of attractive women who want to become his wife. For just £2 a month, you can keep him inside, safe, and talking about Warhammer. Please do your bit to support the channel and watch more videos. And that's it. There we go. No, wait! That was the secret to eternal life. Let me try again. Alternatives to the Magus first. For exactly the same points, we can have an icon ward, and that gives a flat 5+ feel no pain. Not only against psychic things, always feel no pain. If you're wanting a leader for the cult, there is the Patriarch. They give a mini Shadow in the Warp and have combat ability, but then you will need to have some pure strain gene stealers for the Patriarch to go with. Even if we're thinking of things to go with the Neophytes, the Primus is better because that gives you full rerolls to hit, which is very useful when you have mining lasers and seismic cannons that are hitting on a 5+, or just find a better use for the Magus model. Now the Brood Brothers have a Primaris Psyker for 10 points more, and they give a better feel no pain against psychic attacks, 4+ rather than 5+, And you can have a 4+ invulnerable save against shooting attacks coming at you, and more than that, you get a ranged psychic attack, which the Magos just does not. The drawback is that then you can only join Brood Brothers units with the Primaris Psyker, not neophytes. Kazakin are a good unit and thematically make a very nice bodyguard of elite Brood Brothers or neophytes protecting their cult leadership. Then you could have the Primaris Psyker using this Magos model. Kazakin can also give themselves an order each turn, even though they're not part of the Imperial Guard army. Though we don't get access to Voice of Command as a rule, we can still use the orders because the Kazakin have a special rule that gives them an order, regardless of having Voice of Command, which they don't, which we don't as Genestealer Cult, so we do get the order for Kazakin. When the Primaris Psyker is using his Psychic Barrier, if he messes up and rolls a 1, that's D3 mortal wounds to the unit. If the Magos messes up and rolls a 1, that's D3 mortal wounds to the model. So you're much more likely to have the Magos die from their own psychic shenanigans than you are with the Primaris Psyker. The mind control of the Magos is only 12 inches away. That's a very short range. And then you pick one enemy unit within that range, roll a dice. On a 1, you take some mortal wounds on the model. 2 to 5, that enemy unit is at -1 to hit, and if you're lucky enough to roll a 6, it doesn't shoot at all. And once per battle, you can make this 24-inch range. The Primaris Psyker gives you a 4+ invulnerable save against everything attacking your unit. So the Magos is limited to 24-inch range. The Primaris Psyker is everything. The Magos needs line of sight. The Primaris Psyker's ability works against everything that's attacking your squad. So it will also work against indirect fire, whereas the Magos needs line of sight. The Primaris Psyker stops all incoming fire, whereas the Magos can only, at best, stop one enemy.
Well, it must have saved the life of whoever was wearing it.
Well, it sure would have if it hadn't been for all them other bullets flying in from everywhere.
So how do we use the Magos? Well, you could come from underground with a group of neophytes as a bodyguard, or forget the bodyguard, just have the Magos by themselves, and mind control one unit that you really don't want to have shooting. So that could be a Basilisk, or something that's firing indirectly, a Desolation Squad. You pop up near them, because the Magos has Deep Strike, roll a dice, as long as you don't roll a 1, that unit is going to be at least -1 to hit. And I'm picking these examples because they have special rules that let them ignore the -1 to hit for firing indirectly anyway. This may be the best use. Popping up alone and annoying an enemy unit that you don't want to have firing a lot of bullets. A Tau Crisis team that has a lot of shots. They want to be -1 to hit. But what you can't do is resist Overwatch. So you can't have them pop up and then not get shot, whether with a unit of Acolytes with demolition charges or neophytes, because you can only use the mind control power in your opponent's shooting phase, not in your own movement phase. So we're still vulnerable to Deep Strike followed by Overwatch. But having the Magos pop up, roll 1 dice 1 time, is quite a lot for 50 points. Oh, but I have a way that we can make that 50 points really work. Now in 8th edition, we had a psychic power called Mind Control. Sure, that exists here, but it's nowhere near as good. In 8th edition, you could pick an enemy unit, and as long as you passed a test against them, you got to fire all of their guns as if it was your model. Alternatively, you could make 1 close combat attack. But you could fire an enemy's flamer on the models in its own squad. Or you could use a knight and have it shoot at another enemy knight. So with this power, we just need to think once again about scale. Sure, 1 infantry squad getting -1 to hit for a phase might be a little annoying, but using it on a Baneblade, or a Space Marine Gladiator with lots of guns and lots of shots, that -1 to hit will do more, and maybe you'll roll a 6, and then you just turn off that massive knight as it points its flame cannon at your neophyte squad. That's what you've got to use the Magos for. You're not protecting the one squad that you're in, like the Primaris Psyker is. You are targeting one enemy to be worse at shooting. And it's done at the start of the shooting phase, not when that enemy unit declares it's going to shoot at you or something else. So you can chase around the enemy's biggest thing, keep rolling the dice, keep giving them -1 to hit, or turning off their shooting altogether, or just blowing yourself up. But we'll see how the dice roll. And that can be how you make a use of the Magos. Or just run the model as a Primaris Psyker with a squad of Kazakin, or Cadians, or Deathcore of Krieg. But I have a whole video about the use of Brood Brothers using the Primaris Psyker, and what Brood Brothers units you may want to include to supplement your Genestealer Cult army. My darlings and viewers, have a great day of 40k.